let's get right down into it. My lecture today is called Japanese Gods is a Con Job. Again, my lecture is called Japanese Gods is a Con Job. Now, if you want to eliminate the Japanese Buddhist mystery, then you must learn history. Again, if you want to not have the Buddhist mystery, then you must learn Buddhist history. If you don't want anyone to deceive you, then you must learn the Lotus Sutra. Again, if you don't want anyone to mislead you, you must learn the Lotus Sutra. If you want to be in the know, then you must study the Ghost Show. Again, if you want to be in the know, then you must study the Ghost Show. All over America, from the East Coast to the West Coast, what I have found in regards to Buddhist teachings is a culture of ignorance. I've never heard such stupid stuff in all of my life. Now, I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and just going to Buddhist meetings, I would go to Buddhist meetings, it was horrible. I mean, these people go to a meeting and it's like a culture of ignorance. I started Buddhist practicing in the 1970s. When I was in the high school, I started to learn Buddhism. From about 1970 and about 1972, I was practicing old Japanese Shotokan karate, and we used to practice Zen teachings. About 1974, I joined the Buddhist religion, Buddhist sect called NSA, or it was Nichiren Shoshu of America. And at that particular time, we were really learning Buddhism because there was teachers, African American teachers, who I could go to, and even the white teachers who I can go to. These were people who you could put your hands on, who you could touch, and they were really studying Buddhism. Now, in this NSA organization, now, what happened? About the late 1980s, boy, this Buddhist leader by the name of Daisaku Ikeda, this dude pulled a major coup in America. And he disguised it by bringing in these Japanese leaders. And they brought these Japanese leaders in, and they created what is called centralization, in that they dismissed all of the leaders we had. In my particular case, they got rid of all the black leaders, and in Memphis, Tennessee, they brought this dude in by the name of George Kusaba. Now, there were George Kusabas all over America. They had these young Japanese dudes in, and they says, we're going to really teach you Buddhism because we're going to bring the Japanese in to teach you. And what these Japanese brought in, they brought in more than Buddhism. They brought in a God concept. They brought in the concept, and the teachers came in with a God concept because they made Daisaku Ikeda a God. They came in with this God concept. Now, there's a record that I wrote to NSA leaders in 1990. I says, man, I cannot take this no more. This stuff is a bunch of nonsense, what they have done. So they came in with a clever way of making Daisaku Ikeda a god. That's why I said Japanese Gods is a con job. But let me tell you more about this story. They got rid of all the black leaders throughout America. And they created a plan called Centralization. Instead of you learning Buddhism locally, all of your focus was in Japan. And they came out with this doctrine. And they came out with this book called From Today Onwards. And everyone would start, instead of learning the Go Show as we learned in the past, we started to learn the teachings of Daisaku Ikeda. This is the plan. This is the strategy. This is the brainwashing plan that this guy had. Now, I didn't know what was going on, but I wrote a letter and I left the organization. Now, 8 years later, I went to Accra, Ghana. And I was wondering what happened to a man by the name of Mr. Joseph Asamani. Now, Mr. Joseph Asamani was the only black general director in NSA, or in Ghana it was called Nichiren Shoshu of Ghana. And we used to read about Mr. Joseph Asamani. And to us in America, he was a hero. Because when I started Buddhism, Dr. Martin Luther King had just got shot 6 years earlier. There was a lot of racial tension in America. And when I got into Buddhism and I saw Mr. Joseph Asamani, I felt real good. But for a decade, we never heard any more about Mr. Joseph Asamani. But in 1998, I traveled to Accra, Ghana, to the first Nichiren Shoshu temple opening in Africa. Now, there's a priest. My priest was Reverend Iwaki. Reverend Iwaki said, "Why are you going to Africa? Why are you going to Africa?" This guy was against us going to Africa. I said, "Because my people are in Africa and I'm going to Africa." But brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. When I got to Africa and I saw what went down in Africa, what had happened was, and you got to take this history, at the same time that Daisaku Ikeda got rid of all the black leaders and all the American leaders, and he restructured this Buddhism with his centralization plan, he tried to do the same thing in Accra, Ghana. But what happened was they had this big plan and they called Joseph Asamani to come to Japan. And what they did was they tricked him into resigning. And they had a big news. They said, "Oh, Joseph Asamani resigned." And then they brought in, they was going to bring in these new Japanese leaders. And so before Mr. Asamani got back to Accra, Ghana, the people in Ghana heard that Joseph Asamani had been replaced. And that were like what was really exciting, that in Ghana they got these brothers called the Ashanti, or the Ashanti warriors. Boy, them Ashanti warriors had weapons, and they met this guy called Mana at the airport in Ghana. And they says, "Oh, hell to the no. Daisaku Ikeda is not going to replace our leaders in Ghana." They said, "We have a constitution in Ghana. And our constitution says outsiders cannot pick leaders for us in Africa. We must pick our own leaders." And 90% of the brothers in Ghana got together and they joined together in unity. And they got together and they petitioned Daisaku Ikeda and the SGI. They petitioned the man. They said, "Please, we want to be respected. We want to have our own leaders. We want to become a part of Buddhism, but we must be respected. You must respect our constitution." Daisaku Ikeda, being the God that he is, and the God that he was, a millionaire, billionaire guy who controlled all the power, who wanted to leave a legacy of power. Daisaku Ikeda says, all of you, over 1,000 Buddhists, black folk in Ghana, Daisaku Ikeda dismissed everyone, said you are no longer in the Buddhist organization. So when I went there in 1998, what's that, about 16 years ago, I captured on film what the blacks in Ghana said. And I want you to hear some of the words of what went down in Accra, Ghana, 25 years ago. How Daisaku Ikeda made himself a god. How he told the people in Ghana, do not read the Go Show. Do not read the words of Nichiren Shoshu. Read the words of Daisaku Ikeda. And he gave the people thousands and thousands of books called From Today Onward. Let's look at what the people in Ghana said 16 years ago about what happened 25 years ago. Let's tell this story how the Japanese gods is a con job. Let's get deep into this thing.
So, the fact, when the decision came to Ghana that I was going to be changed as a leader, the majority of Ghanaian members stood against that. I wrote a petition to President Ikeda. Then when this went on after some time, the SGI got announced that we have the whole membership have challenged President Ikeda. So they have not only removed him, but they've sacked all those people who stood against that decision. So from there, in fact, we were just hanging. They told us that we will have no chance of going to the temple. We have no chance of receiving the bonds. Then all of a sudden we heard that all what they have done to us, against us, also have been done to them by the priesthood. You see, so we also wrote to the priesthood to explain our position. And in fact, they came, they sent a priest here, we gave them all the explanation. And from that on, we decided to organize the hockey organization in Ghana. So we did not leave SGI because of the dispute between the SGI and the priesthood. But it was a problem between we, the Nichiren Shoshu of Ghana members, and the SGI. That's why we left.
I was interviewed by one lady who we were told was a senior editor in the Circulation Boards. Now, she asked a lot of questions, but one question that I always remember was she asked me what do I think would be a problem for Buddhism in Africa. Then I told her that, well, in the first place, when colonialism, or when colonialists came to Africa, they brought along Christianity. One of the duties of Christianity at that time was to make us submissive to the whites, the colonialists. Now, it will be unfortunate, it will be very, very unfortunate if Buddhism, which we so much cherish and which we realize is so, naturally attractive to us, it will be unfortunate if Buddhism also comes in the same form, or it's portrayed to us in the same form. In fact, I told her that I promised her that I'll be one of the people who will resist it and fight it until that element is out of it, because we like the Buddhism, but we wouldn't want it to become another factor to colonize us. Unfortunately, it turned out to be what we were, I was expressing. SGI came to be a thought control body which will tell you everything that you have to do, and if you are not ready to do that, then you should consider yourself as, being thrown out of the organization. And it's the same thing that led to our problem we had over here. Fortunately for us, some of us, like I promised the lady that time, we were around and we fought against that sort of control. Today we have broken that bondage. Let me say very frankly that we broken it. We don't have the same thing.
Sammy, how you doing, man?
I'm fine.
All right. It's such a pleasure talking to you, and I really thank you for doing this interview with me. You're a member of Hokkaido in Ghana.
Yes.
You know, members in America, you know, we all want to know about Buddhism in Ghana, about your practice, what are you doing? You know, for the sake of the members who are watching this video, can you tell us a little bit about the Buddhism in Ghana?
Yes, Buddhism in Ghana has been here for 30 years. I started practicing about 18 years ago. I was once a block leader, and I became new division district chief, and I also became vice treasurer for the whole country, and I was part of the temple committee to build the Okiji temple. I'm now just a leading member running the day-to-day activities of the temple.
If someone wanted to know about Hokkaido in Ghana, the differences of Hokkaido in Ghana, just a little bit about it, I know many members want to know. Can you just kind of describe it a little bit?
Yeah, we're back in the 80s. We're all part of the SGI, and there came a split, and this came about when we had a constitution which said every leader should be elected, and the SGI, the President Ikeda, one day asked some of our leaders to come to Japan, and then we came back and said they nominated a new leader as Sufi with a vice, and the next man was no more. We were just going to be an advisor. We said no, we won't like that. We believe in our constitution.
Because we were given directions by the Sukakai, we thought that all our dealings was with the Sukakai. Later on in our practice, we saw some books started coming. This book was entitled From Today Onwards. When we started reading these books, I realized that the books were only talking about President Ikeda. So sometimes I would think and say, are we practicing Buddhism under the instructions of the priesthood or the president of the Sukakai? So I felt that there's an agenda by the Sukakai. In other words, they wanted to influence all members to follow them. But then the practice taught me that when you practice with sincerity, following what the Buddha has taught, you don't need to imitate anybody. In other words, you don't have to take instructions from President Ikeda. So when they decided to change our leadership, I said, yes, that is the time. The time has reached for them to pursue the agenda. Because maybe they have found something in Mr. Asumeni. In other words, they have seen that they cannot influence him. So there is a need for them to make leadership changes, so that those who they can control will take the leadership decisions. We stood vehemently against this. We sent letters of protest to almost all Sukakai directors all over the world, including President Ikeda. President Ikeda did not even acknowledge the receipt of this protest. All what we heard from them, I don't know whether informal or formal, is that we have been dismissed. So we're practicing. After all, if we read the books, the Gosho does not ask you to follow Ikeda. The Gosho asks you to practice with sincerity, doing all activities of Buddhism, and this will help you to attain enlightenment.
Can you come up with the question again?
years ago,
Yeah.
in 1989, I understand, and a lot of the members left the SGI.
Yes.
What happened?
Well, as I can cast my mind back, there was a whole lot of leadership, confusion. They have appointed some leaders without the knowledge of our general director, that was Asmani by then. And then they appointed 3 vice presidents in addition to his position. And afterwards, we learned they've called them to Japan to have some discussions about leadership role in Ghana. So during that time, we had a call from Japan, from Nana Asmani, now Nana Asmani. That time he was called General Director. The call came that they have removed him as a leader of this organization from Ghana. So we were, very sorry, very worried about how can Ikeda, of all people, just remove Joseph Asmani, then our leader, from his role as a leader. So we were waiting to hear some result from Ikeda himself, what happened. So at that time, Mina came in to report about the reason why they should have removed Asmani. Then we said no. Before you can remove somebody who is a leader, you have to calm down, we sit down and talk. So that brought the whole thing. We said we are not going to agree with their leadership. We want to sit down and thrash out the matter. What happened before they have to remove him, because we are not aware about what happened, exactly what happened. We are just here. Then Joseph Asmani called us in Ghana from Japan that they have removed him. So no, he's still our leader. We don't know anybody apart from him. Yes, of course.
Why?
Because of his ways, how he imposed things on us. He brought us a whole ship of books only concerning his speeches. He called that book From Today Onwards. One person can receive as much as 20 copies. Apart from that, he told us not to read the Gosho. We should only concentrate on Ikeda's speeches, only, but not the Gosho. And not even our leaders' speeches, but only the Gosho. So we thought, they are imposing certain things on us, apart from the real meaning of Buddhism. What Nichiren actually taught us in the Gosho, we're deviating from all these things, only to read, in fact, from today's onwards.
So what went down in Ghana? Being in Ghana changed my life immensely. I was never the same after coming from Ghana. In fact, this leather jacket that I have on, this is kente cloth. I had this leather jacket and all my clothes made in Ghana, my whole house. I have more African art in my house than any house in America. Ghana really, really changed me, because what I saw for the first time in my life, I saw people of African descent working together in harmony as family, and I saw how beautiful Buddhism could really work when people work in unity. Ghana was like heaven. In fact, I joined the temple in Ghana, and 3 times a year from 1998, for almost a decade, I would travel to Ghana. I even got into the African import business. Now, something else happened, however, that was very strange. Now, the people in Ghana, they joined Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, and they built the largest Buddhist temple outside of Japan in the world. They built a temple that could hold over 1,000 people. Now, even though I was a part of Nichiren Shoshu, and I came back to America, and I was so excited, and I told my NSA brothers and sisters, I said, man, you guys got to find out, got to learn what happened in Ghana. But a strange thing had happened. In America, the Japanese were successful in tearing. They first of all got rid of all the black leaders, and then they replaced the black leaders with women, with black women who were educated, highly disciplined. And these women got in these NSA positions, and then they didn't have males in the SGI organization because the women was running everything and all the brothers had kind of left. So when I got back to America and I contacted my SGI brothers and I contacted people in Nichiren Shoshu. Now, what happened was all of my friends who had known for over 20 years, who had been my friend and been like a family, they had so much faith in Daisaku Ikeda. Daisaku Ikeda was successful in a decade of bringing these Japanese leaders in, and with their indoctrination, they did not believe what I told them what happened in Ghana. The black people would not believe it. Now, concurrently, I saw a big difference that happened with Nichiren Shoshu. You had a parallel battle of Daisaku Ikeda being a god and the Nichiren Shoshu high priest vying himself as a god. So you had this big fight between Daisaku Ikeda and Nichiren Shonin, and the two Japanese titans fought for over 2 decades. They are still fighting today. They are the worst examples of peace or people coming together. But what happened was you had one Japanese titan, SGI leader Daisaku Ikeda, the other Japanese titan who was the high priest. And what happened was they created a new paradigm. Not a new paradigm, but they were successful in creating a paradigm in America. When I came back to the Buddhist meetings right here in Memphis, Tennessee, Reverend Murata broke up the black people. We had the largest African-American Nichiren Shoshu Sangha or group in America. Reverend Murata broke it up. And after that, I saw differences in the Nichiren Shoshu priests. Things started going down. Now, in 1999, after seeing what went down in Ghana, and what happened was when I tried to communicate what went down to my SGI brothers, they would not listen to me. They would not accept my letters. And there was a white guy by the name of Craig Bratcher. I said, Craig, I want to tell my story, man. They won't even talk to me. And Craig Bratcher helped me to set up a website called The Proud Black Buddhist. And I began to write stories of the Proud Black Buddhist, and I would get into the battles. And I was a member of Nichiren Shoshu. Now, what happened was, after going to Ghana, every year I would travel to the head Nichiren Shoshu temple in Japan. Now, what happened was, I was not controlled by anyone. I was a proud black man. And I had the Proud Black Buddhist website, and I told it like it is, like it was. I was not controlled by no SGI, and I was not controlled by no Nichiren Shoshu. But let me tell you the story. I was at the head temple in Japan in 2003. Now, there's this leader. His name is Tony. Tony, if you're listening, brother, I hadn't forgot about you. Tony was a big Nichiren Shoshu leader. He questioned the fact that a black man could have a website and not get permission from the priest. And so Tony got, there I am at the head temple in Japan, and Tony got this young priest by the name of Reverend Takahashi. And Reverend Takahashi and Tony came there and they confronted me. They said, I want to know about this website that you have. I looked at that little sucker priest, little punk priest. I said, wait a minute. Let me tell you something. First of all, you are not my priest and I know Japanese culture. You have no business in my face talking to me. I said, number two, let me tell you something, young man, young priest. I am an American citizen and I have freedom of religion. And if you dare to say something to me about my website of the Proud Black Buddhist, I will take you to court because I have religious freedom. I'm no Japanese. You can't come talk to me and you better get up my face. However, since we are at the head temple of Nichiren Shoshu in Japan, let's go upstairs to the Overseas Bureau because I want to discuss issues of racism anyway in Nichiren Shoshu. I said, I dare you to do it. Have some guts. Come, let's go upstairs. Let's talk. I said, we're at the temple. That young priest ducked his head down and walked out like a little puppy. And I looked at Tony. I said, ha. But what that Nichiren Shoshu priest did was 1 year later, my buddy out of California says, man, what's his name? Tom. His name was Thomas. Tom. Can't think of the brother's last name right now. Tom told me, says, man, they was talking about you at Tozan. All the priests got together and talked about you. Now what happened was, what these Japanese dudes did was, they didn't want to see a black man stand up, have a website, do something without the priests, because they are control freaks and the Japanese wanted to control you. They want to control your thinking. Now, I didn't think no more about this. In 2006, I want to show you a picture. I am at Magoji Temple in Chicago. And I brought my beautiful wife to Reverend Murata. And I asked Reverend Murata to marry me because my faith was in Nichiren Shoshu. There I am, a dedicated, loyal Buddhist. But them Japanese had it in for me because they got it in for a brother. I could go to the high priest and high temple at Taisekiji, and I could film in Taisekiji. I filmed 3 high priests. I would talk to the people in Taisekiji, but when you got to America, you had a different model. You had a different kind of thinking that was going on in this Buddhism. So there I was in the middle. There's Daisaku Ikeda, the Buddhist God, and there's Nichiren Shoshu High Priest, God. Now, we come to 2008. And I want to show you pictures what happened in 2008. What happened in 2008, Reverend Murata, who had broke up the black folk in Memphis, who sabotaged, who broke up the black meetings in Memphis, and he put his own puppet leader, Mr. Gerald Hoskins, as the leader. And I would go to those meetings and they had controlled the thinking. I would say, why is it that this man who was college educated, went to a black school, why is it that this black man cannot read the Go Show? Why is it that he does not study? Now, there's fights going on all over Memphis black people not talking to each other. There's the SGI on this side, there's Nichiren Shoshu on this side, and you got black folk fighting a Japanese war. Here we are struggling. In 2008, I asked this priest, I said, Reverend Iwaki, when you come to Memphis, Tennessee, would you please do a prayer for Dr. Martin Luther King? This low-down, dirty dog of a priest. And Nichiren Shonin calls priest dogs in the Ghost Show. This priest got together with Gerald Hoskins, a black man who went to a black school, who had the meetings at his house. They got together and said, listen, I'm going to come to Memphis, Tennessee, but do not tell Anthony Elmore I am here. It just so happened that I, out of my honesty, called a priest and said, Reverend, if you ever come to Memphis, Tennessee, I'm looking forward to you visiting the Civil Rights Museum, and I would like you to do some things to really know and learn about our culture. He says, well, I'm coming to Memphis on Saturday. Now, what happened was, it was about August the 16th, I believe, in 2008. And what happened in the interim period, instead of him going to the Martin Luther King Civil Rights Museum, what had happened was black leader, a man who we call the Black Moses, Isaac Hayes, had died. Gerald Hoskins' house in Isaac Hayes in the Stax Museum, where the soul music was born, where soul music was happening at Stax Museum, and Isaac Hayes, a Grammy and an Oscar Award winner for the song of Shaft. Isaac Hayes, a man who had went to Accra, Ghana to open up a school, a man who was a hero to us black people. All I asked this Nichiren Shoshu priest to do was go. We can walk down about 1,000 feet to the Stax Museum. Gerald Hoskins lived on a street called Azalea. Azalea was the next street over, 1,000 feet from the Stax Museum, and this low-down, dirty, rotten priest, who calls himself a priest, would not do a prayer for Isaac Hayes. I put it on the website, and I documented. Not only would this priest not do a prayer for Isaac Hayes, he would not pray for Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was at a meeting at Gerald Hoskins' house one day, and I was complaining, and the sister who was over named Rosalind Parks, who was supposed to be my friend, Rosalind. I said, this is a low-down, dirty, no-good priest. And me and Rosalind got into it because I had proof of facts that this guy was racist. Would not do a prayer for Dr. Martin Luther King, would not say a prayer for Isaac Hayes, and Rosalind and I got into it. And Gerald Hoskins also chimed in. And Gerald said, I said, I'm going to leave. I don't need to come here anymore. And I was in the hallway leaving. And Gerald says, man, I want to ask you to leave. I said, brother, I've already left your house. I never came back to this brother's house again. Now, that is in 2008. Now, back in 2006, I went to a meeting at Gerald Hoskins' house, and there was Reverend Murata there. And I asked Reverend Murata, I said, Reverend Murata, I would like to know about the grand, the cosmic Buddha at Totoji Temple in the ancient capital of Nara, Japan. This man has an image of an African. This was almost 1,000 years before Nichiren Shonin. They have this is on the National Historic Register. I would like to know about this Buddha. It's the largest statue in the world, the largest indoor statue in the world. It's made of bronze and gold, and it's the image of a black man. And I asked this Nichiren Shoshu priest, Reverend Murata, and Reverend Murata looked me in the eyes and says, I don't deal in racism. How dare you? It has nothing to do with racism. When you go to Taisekiji Temple and the ancient capital of Japan, the ancient capital of Nara in Japan, the world's largest Buddhist statue is that of a black man, and this priest say he don't deal in racism just because I asked him about the history. He was a liar. He was a scum. And then Reverend Murata, Reverend Iwaki, I asked Reverend Iwaki about this. This man is a priest of Nichiren Shoshu, the largest iconic Buddhist statue indoor in the world, and this man tells me he don't know anything about it. How dare you? You don't know about the national historic largest, world's largest, oldest Buddhist statue indoor in the world at Taisekiji in Nara, Japan. You don't know your Buddhist history, and you a liar. This Buddhist priest, Reverend Iwaki, came to this house, and that man had the nerve to tell me that he said, let's leave culture out of Buddhism. In other words, what he meant was, let's leave black culture out of Buddhism. We don't want you to study black culture. We don't want you to have no history. All I want you to do is follow the high priest. The high priest is not a god. The high priest is a man. The high priest is a human. Daisaku Ikeda is not a god. The Buddha says, follow the law and do not follow persons. Let me bring this lecture to a close. And I want to read something. As I said earlier, if you don't want anyone to deceive you, you must read the Lotus Sutra. If you want to be in the know, you must read the Gosho. And I'm going to conclude with some Gosho passages. Let me grab the Gosho. Now, let me read the Gosho to you. You got me sweating here. Now, for those of you who have your Gosho, there's a Gosho of the writings of the 13th century sage by the name of Nichiren. And there's a Gosho called A Sage and an Unenlightened Man. And it says, therefore, in the 6th volume of the Nirvana Sutra, his final teachings delivered in the grove of sal trees, our merciful Father Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of teachings, said, quote, rely on the law and not upon persons. Even when great bodhisattvas such as Universal Worthy and Manjushri men have returned to the stage of near perfect enlightenment, expound the Buddhist teachings, if they do not do so with sutra in hand, then one should not heed them. Did you hear this? If someone comes, has near perfect enlightenment, like a so-called Daisaku Ikeda or Nichiren Shoshu high priest, if they don't have sutra in hand, we are not to heed to them. But it goes on further. The great teacher Tenkai states that which accords with the sutra is to be written down and made available. But put faith in anything that in word or meaning fails to do so. Here we see that one should accept what is clearly stated in the text of the sutras, but discard anything that cannot be supported by text. These Nichiren Shoshu priests come to Memphis, Tennessee. They don't have no sutra in hand. They don't have no text. All they have is a robe on and bringing you some culture. He goes on further. The great teacher Dingyo says, depend upon the preachings of the Buddha and do not put faith in traditions handed down orally. Like the Nichiren Shoshu priest says, we have this special breathing of one high priest to the next high priest. The Buddha says you don't put faith in anything orally. Further, he said, which express the same idea as the passages from Tentai's commentary. And Bodhisattva Nagarjuna says that one should rely on treatises that are faithful to the sutras, but not rely on those that distort the sutras. Daisaku Ikeda are teaching things that distort the sutra, like on Today Onwards, or the Human Revolution. This has nothing to do with the sutras. This passage may be understood to mean that even among various sutras, one should discard the provisional teachings and put forth prior to the lotus and put one's faith in this sutra, the lotus. Thus, both sutras and treatises make it perfectly clear that one should discard all scriptures other than the lotus. Unquote. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this lecture. And the Buddha teaches us to put faith in the law and not in persons. So, what happened in Accra, Ghana? Just as Daisaku Ikeda got rid of Joseph Asamani, the black leader who brought Nichiren Shoshu to Ghana, the Nichiren Shoshu priests got rid of him, and they get rid of anybody who teaches the sutra, because one is no better than the other. And before I close this lecture, I went to Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, and my friend Shaka, who's a Nichiren Shoshu member, I asked Nichiren Shoshu, and I wrote a letter specifically to the African American priest, female priest by the name of Muke Shonen, and I asked her what was her policy regarding black people. And Shaka wrote me a letter back and said, you are no longer welcome in my house. You know not welcome in my house. You can't come back to no more Nichiren Shoshu meetings. And Muke Shonen did not have the guts to say anything, because that is the way she believed. And she put shock up to this mess, because birds of a feather flock together. So what you have is the Japanese Buddhist God. It's a con job. Thank you very much.
Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. Tell me what the line I see. Disregard what the facts may be. All ancient icons show a simple fact. They all show that the Buddha was black. I believe in facts and Ikeda was wrong.